Hi guys, and welcome back to the Brake Van Diaries. Now in today's episode 19, we're going to be looking at two jobs. The first is a fairly simple one, and that is, as I mentioned last episode, getting all the split pins and washers in and making sure everything's nice and tidy underneath. But the second thing, a little bit of a larger project, is going to be removing the ducket on the opposite side. So we'll roll the intros and I'll explain a little bit about what we're getting up to. Right, so as you'd have seen from those time lapses, we've now got all of the split pins in, holding all the plates and the brake blocks on, and everything is now nice and secure. So that means if this does move anywhere, we know the brakes work and we know that nothing's going to fall off as it's moving about. So that kind of leaves us quite happy with the state of the brake mechanism at the moment. There's still a little bit of treating and painting to be done on some of the components, but for now, while we deal with slightly more pressing issues, this is going to be perfectly fine. So what we'll do now is go into the inside of the brake van, and I'll show you what we're getting up to for the rest of the video. Right, so like I said, we've got to get one of these duckets off. Now, this is definitely the worst one out of the two because of how much rotten wood there is in the uprights. And what I've done with my new multi-tool is, as you can see, I've started carving a line down the side of these tongue and groove boards. And basically, just behind here, there's a metal pole, and that's sort of the start of where this upright is positioned. So to get these out, I've got to just trim the whole way around the two uprights and the crossbeam, because the other crossbeam below me is completely rotten anyway, and then hopefully that will allow this to fall out. And then what we can do is, while we work on that, I've got another tarpaulin which I will then fix across this side of the brake van, so both sides are enclosed to stop any rain or anything while I'm not down here. But the plan will be eventually, I think, to completely replace all of these tongue and groove boards anyway, but just for now, just to keep everything fairly neat, as I say, I'm just going to trim around the outside, and then hopefully we can get this ducket out. And then once it's out, we can then assess what sort of work we need to do to prepare the area for the new one. So let's crack on. Right, and just like that, that is now the frame completely exposed, which means I can now take some measurements as well of all the bits that I'm taking out, because obviously these panels up here, these have got to come out, and the uprights here have got to come out, and the cross piece here, which I think is only joined between those two anyway, so that won't be too difficult to replace, needs to come out as well. And then once hopefully all of this comes out, the ducket should come with it, although using the multi-tool, I've actually found it's perfect for getting in between the gaps between the ducket and the wood, so I can get behind it and just cut through the screws. So you've got quite a bit of depth there, which means that I can fit behind there and cut them if I need to. So what we'll do now is we'll nip back out up the ladder and try and cut out some more of the bolts. But as you can see here, it's pretty much all exposed now, so I've got a much better idea of what I need to do. I can probably actually hammer these out from the inside as well, and yeah, then we'll go from there. Right, so as you've seen from that last clip, we have finally got one of the duckets off, and I'm really pleased that we've made that next step forwards. But as you can see here, a lot of the wood has seen better days. Now, as I mentioned very early on in the series, these two uprights are going to be replaced. Well, that's still obviously going to happen, but the other thing that I might end up doing, well, I probably am going to do, because I have now decided that I'm stripping down all the cladding on both sides. So you can see here, I'm just trying to work out and take some measurements of some of the cutting for the upright here, just to make sure when I get a new piece, it's all cut the same and fits the same. And the depth here is about roughly the depth of one of these tongue and groove boards. So that will sit on either side, and then obviously the ducket will sit above it there. But what the plan is to do is to strip it all down, take out this long piece that runs the whole length of the brake van and replace it with a new piece. So that will then run over the steps at either end as well, which will look a lot nicer. And I mean, as I'm taking the cladding off, it only makes sense to replace this anyway. And it means when the cladding goes back on, we'll have something nice and new and firm to screw the new cladding to. Now the piece at the top, that's actually in pretty good condition, so I'm not going to touch that. We're just going to take the cladding off, take the uprights off and replace the long horizontal piece here. But what I need to do now, as it's drawing towards the end of the day, is get a tarpaulin up over this. Now I've left these railings on for the exact reason that hopefully this will stop the tarpaulin blowing away too much. So what I'm going to do is get the tarpaulin on, and then we'll be back down the railway tomorrow. Right, so it is part 2 of episode 19, and as you can see, since the last clips we've made a fair amount of progress, and that includes removing some of the inside cladding, and as you can see, some of the outside cladding, especially near the frame, has been removed. Now I've also removed the 2 uprights that hold the ducket in place on this side. This side behind the camera I'm keeping as is, just so I can replicate this side first and get one side done, and then we can do the second side. But as I make these pieces up, I'm going to make 2 of everything, so that way when we come to that side, it's going to be pretty much just a replace what's there, rather than try and make everything fit and look nice again. So as you can see, this is one of the 2 uprights on this side, and the reason I've kept this is because you might be able to see here, it's got various cuts and indents in it, and various shapes and things that I need to replicate on the new pieces. So I've come down today mainly to measure up some of these pieces and tidy up a lot of the area around the frame, just so when I get the new ones of these, it'll just be a matter of remaking these like slots and things again, and hopefully they should fit right back where these came out of. And then after that, obviously it's then just a matter of replacing the tongue and groove board on this side and the outside. You'll also see from the shot here that the gauge for the vacuum through pipe has now been removed, and that just allows me to get access to the tongue and groove board that was behind that as well. So to continue on with today's plans, I think what I'm going to try and do is get this piece of metal, we might not be able to see from the angle there, that holds the desk up out of this tongue and groove board here, so I can then continue to remove the boards all the way to the floor. I then need to repeat the process on the side just to the left of the camera shot there, and then have a think about measuring up some of the pieces that I need to replace on the outside. So that's going to include obviously the tongue and groove board here. There's so many gaps and everything between it, as I said in the last clips. I think that I'm going to just replace this lot anyway, so I just need to do some calculations and measuring to make sure I'm ordering the right size stuff to replace it. So then hopefully once we've replaced the two horizontal pieces, which I think are around 15 foot 8 inches long, so two of them, well, one of them on each side is going to get replaced. Then the frame around the ducket can be put in, the cross piece between the two uprights can then be put in, and obviously that depends for the height of the cross piece on what size tongue and groove boards I can get, because at the moment I haven't actually found any the same size as this. They've all been a little bit too short. So dependent on where these two top pieces sit will be where the ducket sits when that's replaced. So before we jump into the next time-lapse sequence, I thought I would just ask for your thoughts regarding the series of the Brake Van Diaries so far, whether you thought the episodes are too short or too long, because I've noticed as the series is going on, sort of the views are dropping off a little bit by bit. Would you rather me continue doing the Brake Van series alongside the box series and other things, or would you rather me just merge it into one slightly longer video? Or how do you like the format of it so far? So if you have made it this far, do let me know in the comment section what your thoughts are, as we're nearly on episode 20, so any feedback would be greatly appreciated. But yeah, just thought I'd just sort of mention that, see if anyone had any different ideas of how we could continue the series, or if you're good with it how it is, then we'll just carry on like this. But yeah, let's jump into the next bit of the video. Right, so we've moved along a little bit now, and as you can see, we've got the majority of the wood from this section down here removed. Now, there was a box section here, if you remember, and I've just moved that to one side just to get me some more access to the end piece. But the next thing I need to do is remove this last piece of decking here up to where the brake wheel starts, and then I can sweep and tidy up everything here and have a nice sort of clean base to work from. Now, while I've got it in this state, it's worth having a look at some of the things that I've got to remember for when I reinstall some of these pieces of wood. Now, I have ordered these two pieces here, as you might be able to see at the bottom of the shot here. These are two 5-foot lengths, roughly two 5-foot lengths that run just from the inside of one end of the brake van to the other, and then obviously join in the middle. And you've got roughly a couple of centimetre gap between here and the concrete slab, and that runs all the way down on both this piece and the long horizontal, the sort of 16-foot horizontal piece also has a gap between that and the concrete as well. It then has two wooden beams that sit across the middle, one just below the camera and one just under me here, and they're in really good condition, so I don't need to touch them. Quite happy with that. I have ordered two new pieces of these two pieces of this, as it has split here, although I could probably reuse it, but for the sake of a couple of quid I may as well replace it. It's also worth noting that this corner piece, this corner iron here, this sits flush with the end of the outside bit of the 16-foot piece, and then the metal upright here, this little metal rod, sits inside the notch here and just flush with the end of the right angle here. This right angle, as well as sitting flush with the outside, also sits perfectly square with the end of the piece of wood of the cross beams here, so I know when I come back to reassembling it that I know exactly where that piece of metal can then go back in to be fixed to the 16-foot horizontal piece. So there's a few things I'm just going to take a couple of measurements of, and then we're going to remove this piece here, sweep it all up, and then I'll join you back in a second. So one thing I'd like to do is do an entire video on refurbing the brake wheel and the housing for it and the base. Now, when I was cleaning up, I noticed that with a chisel, I was starting to scrape away what feels like sort of mud. Obviously, you can see the green where the sort of, I don't know what's moss, surface moss or something has started to grow on there. But after scraping it back a little bit, you get back to this sort of concrete. I'm not actually sure what material this is, some form of steel of some kind. But once we've got back to that, once we've cleaned this all up, this is going to look rather nice, I think. But I want to do that for it as its own video, and perhaps a video or both of them, including cleaning up this and the pipe that goes up to the emergency release valve. But I think on that note, that's where I'm going to leave it for today's video. Now, while this video may not be particularly long, there was a lot of time that went into getting it even into the state it is in now. But next video, hopefully the next one of these will be after the wood has arrived, and we can go back to the exterior and have a look at removing the big 16-foot piece of wood there. But as always, if you guys did enjoy, please do hit the thumbs up. If this is your first time here and you've made it this far to the video, please do subscribe, and there's plenty more on the channel as well if you want to catch up with all the previous episodes. Please, as I said, any feedback on the format of the videos at the moment would be greatly appreciated in the comment section. And other than that, I will see you all in the next video.